Hey, so good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for my delayed arrival. I'm Dave Angeletti, the Director of Ecosystems here at Tradewind, and my pleasure to kind of get these things rolling this afternoon. Many thanks to Krista for kicking us off. Couple rules of the road. There is to be no allotment for Q&A in this presentation. That's all going to be handled post-event, as it has been for all of our other presenters. We're going to go ahead and relinquish the stage for the remaining 20 minutes to Mr. Zach Levy from Cognovi Labs. So with that, Zach, take it away.
Thank you very much, Dave and Chris. I appreciate it. So yes, I'm Zach Levy. I'm a retired Army Information Operations Officer, functional area FA-30. I recently left Washington D.C. and moved back to my wife's home state of Ohio, and joined a company born out of academia, actually, with federal funding through some grant money and research called Cognovi Labs. And so I'll go ahead and share a screen and kind of walk you through a little bit of a presentation as well as some of the demos of our technology here. So Cognovi Labs was born at Wright State University with funding from the U.S. Air Force, the National Science Foundation, and the Department of Energy. The initial requirement was, can we predict human decision making in real time? And the research out of psychology had proven that if you understand and map out people's emotions, you really begin to measure that emotional uh, process of how people come to make decisions. And around 50 years of research has proven that we as human beings, up to 90% of our decisions are based on emotions. And of that, a lot of it coming from the subconscious mind. But of course, we believe that we're rational actors, yet we say one thing and do another. So lexically, when you look at the words that we say, they often don't correspond exactly to how we're going to act in the future. So Cognitive Labs combines behavioral psychology with advanced machine learning to really get that measurement of emotions and predictive nature towards tomorrow's decisions. I won't belabor the agenda here, but I'm going to kind of talk about the problems that Cognovi's seen to date. If I can get my mouse to work here. Okay, so Cognovi Labs, as the technology was being built in the university, they realized there was a lot of commercial opportunity here. And so first they went after the commercialization and tech transfer process to get it out of the university and into a company. That all started in 2014, ended in 2015. The company began mapping out emotions within financial transactions, specifically investment decisions, buy, sell, trade, etc. The idea that there was no way to really replicate the people on the floor, say in New York City and Manhattan, where our company was born. But how to figure out, is there a way to use an artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithm to quantify that process and qualify it throughout, say a buying and selling cycle? Because of course, what happened yesterday may happen again tomorrow, but it may not. And in reality, a lot of those companies in New York City, like Morgan Stanley, Saks Fifth Avenue, even the SP 500 and Nasdaq, realized that tools like sentiment analysis were good in general terms, but of course, they never were able to extrapolate forward lexically what words, when it came to tonation and polarity, would really amount to for tomorrow's decision making. So the cost in Cognovi's experience has been that obviously, profit and loss and market share. But in the public sector, as they've learned through their CIBR awards and CIDR awards, beginning in FY19, FY20, and still to this day, we've obviously, the companies realized that, hey, this is all about people and mission. And as a result of those awards, they were able to hire me in the process of me moving from DC back to my wife's home state of Ohio. And because they were born at Wright State, they have a space here in Ohio for me to hang my hat. But the idea that decisions, do we know what's going to happen? Do you know the ripple effects beyond just the causality of left and right limits, and knowing what's going to be able to predict, when it comes to military decisions or your own personnel decisions in your office? Is someone going to quit? Are they going to stay? Are they the right candidate? Their SF-86 says this, but are they really good for that job or that assignment? A number of different use cases where we found a kind of home for our technology so far in the DoD. I kind of mentioned this slide already as far as where it came from. Lots of incredible publishing around it, peer-reviewed work to prove out this technology and build the provenance and credibility for it. It was through 8 years of iterative development in the university with federal funding, and then of course was really kind of, I'll call it, commercialized in the DoD context, getting us out to high TRL levels through this SBIR process under the U.S. Air Force, specifically through the 711th Human Performance Wing, which is all focused on airman readiness, airman cognitive ability, emotional stability. countering suicide, sexual assault related issues, morale issues, as well as on the ISR, intelligence surveillance reconnaissance use case kind of track, where we were supporting both aerial assets, maritime assets, across all domains of warfare throughout the ISR kind of function area. The technology itself did receive a patent while still in university, and that technology has been iteratively developed upon since then. Initially, that patent was exclusively on emotion prediction based on textual data, specifically from Twitter. So we had a very unique approval with Twitter to do a lot of this work. That unique agreement has been, I'll say, tested many times as we've continued to do different use cases for different clients, in particular when we've done things in the name of national security, law enforcement, intelligence. Companies like Twitter get kind of nervous about things like that when it comes to the use of their data, and so we've kind of made sure that we have the right lawyers on staff and right team on staff to make sure we're staying within the realm of legality and not violating any sort of privacy concerns. So the technology itself, we measure, predict, and shape human decision making in real time. We do that by analyzing any emotional data and stimuli from textual or transcribable data sources. And so if you really think about what that means, I have another slide that shows this, but textual or transcribable, that's actually almost everything. Because you imagine ISR, whether it's video imagery or audio, phone calls, radios, call centers, all these different things can be transcribed and almost in near real time to enable our technology to look at that textual data in real time and give these predictive analyses, and then even then get to the shaping part here, which as a former IO deception expert for different SOCOM units, that was sort of where I found a lot of success and enjoyment in my career was, creating so much ambiguity or certainty of a certain thing that in some cases we would never have to put people in harm's way because adversaries, you know, state actors, non-state actors would, eliminate themselves in some cases. So the idea that we're really getting into operationalizing narrative and strategy to, create change on the battlefield, or in this case, within your own formations, for instance, on your ship or a submarine. I know as a child, my father was in the Navy as a machinist mate, and then a nuke on carriers and subs, and so I certainly got to live through a lot of the stories that he told me about problems that he ran into, especially with the introduction of women on submarines, for instance, and how a lot of these things went unreported. A lot of these things, were sent to be, said to be career killers if you ever said you had an issue, whether it was mental health, behavioral issues, or the unfortunate suicide issues that are plaguing not the broader DoD, but especially in recent times the U.S. Navy. And I have an actual use case with a demo that can go into that detail there. The framework of how the technology works, when we say that we combine machine learning with behavioral psychology, it's not just that we say that. We actually have a whole team of behavior scientists, including licensed clinical psychologists, neuroscientists, behavior scientists, and therapists that work with our data teams to ensure that when we build our AI models, it's not just to say that we have these great AI models, because dime a dozen companies that offer AI and machine learning, and some of those tools are great. But I can say from personal experience, leveraging sentiment analysis tools in places like Niger, Syria, South Sudan, a lot of these sentiment analysis tools get it wrong because they measure affirmative or positive statements, which in the case of Russian SVR, that's confirming our identity. While that's a positive statement, when you get a bag put over your head, it's not the most enjoyable experience, and hoping that the Department of State can negotiate your release. But we had confidence in that tool to provide us friendly routes versus adversarial routes, on our government iPhones. So the way that Cognovi's technology works, we take in any textual data, transcribable data. In parentheses, there are some examples of where we pulled that from. We have our own contractual agreements, enterprise agreements with certain social media companies, as well as different like crawlers and scrapers to get us access in deep and dark web. But then again, we also work with clients in their data environments, some cases exclusively in their data environments, where we perform there and the data never comes to us. We simply deploy as an API into their environment. And that's both seamless, and you eliminate a lot of latency issues, things like that. And there's a lot of security things that you can eliminate by operating in their environment. But we focus on any thematic drivers or topical focus areas within doctrinal terms within DoD. You can certainly figure out where we can go with that. But we focus on The initial core 6 emotions from Dr. Paul Ekman, who in 1972 published that the human experience is defined by 6 core emotions. And they're the first 6 in that list there of joy, anger, disgust, fear, sadness, and surprise. And then through our iterative development, after the patent was awarded, we supplemented it with 4 more. We add amusement, contempt, hope, and trust to give us 10 emotions from which we measure every sort of textual and transcribable data source. With our behavior science team, this is where they come in to create the action tendencies. And so what if you have all these influencers on social media, or these YouTube stars, or HVTs and known associates, etc. If you go into that space, um, are they creating a change? Are they creating a bias towards action in your emission environment? This is really where we map this out through behavior science and psychology, where we actually take these emotions and map them to action tendencies. Are they withdrawn from a situation? Or on the other end, are they aggressively tackling that situation? Or are they somewhere in between? And then once you quantify that and qualify those emotions, given the context from which they were identified in that situation, wherever that may be, you then have a psychological AI score per thematic driver of specific mission focus or mission interest. I mentioned the data sources. On the left here within PAI, OSINT, it is everything we can bring to the table on our own. This is the sort of things that we do with some of our consumer brands clients, like Nike, for instance, or Peloton, or McDonald's, or some of the banks that we work with in New York City, hedge funds, or in the consumer pharma healthcare space. Like some of the pharma companies throughout COVID, we had an incredible reception with a lot of the pharma manufacturers for COVID vaccines, helping get patients out of their fear and entrapment, not just of the COVID vaccine, but other medicines for chronic disease, actually. And we actually helped discover a chronic issue in the United States that around 140,000 lives are lost every single year due to failure to adhere to prescription medications. And there's a lot of reasons and variables in that, but one of them was just people, being stuck in their own heads and not be able to realize that, hey, this physician, this team of providers is indeed trying to help me. How can I get out of my own head to receive this information, process this information, and then move about my course of action to ensure I get a better healthy state. On the non-PAI side, this is where clients provide us data. So as I mentioned, some of those healthcare use cases, it was the actual medical system itself, the companies providing us data, or we performed in their environment on their data. But this is where we get into things like, for instance, on the consumer side, we have the National Suicide Hotline. We've also done pilots for the VA where we've worked with their suicide call center hotline, things like that. But obviously, we adhere to all compliance and security standards to ensure that we're not violating any of those laws and policies particular to each client environment. One really unique thing that kind of sealed the deal for me as far as my own career of why I came to this company. One, having spent time in Silicon Valley, I wanted to find a company that kind of gave me that sort of cool tech feeling, but also one that added value, not just to my life, but to those around me. And so, in emotion AI technology, really seemed like something that fit that bill. But specifically, knowing some of the pitfalls of technologies I've seen, whether I was working under certain title authorities on the SOCOM side, and Department of State side, or more on the clandestine service side, uh, you know, translation has its pitfalls. And one of the first things that happens when you translate, if you don't have enough good interpreters with you, is you lose the context, you lose the meaning, and specifically you lose the emotion from the text data that you're looking at. Our technology is built and written in native tongue. Right now, we have actually 21 languages where we have the fidelity of knowing idioms of language, for instance, sarcasm, metaphors, stories, colloquialisms. Even recently, we've developed emoji language and short form curse words and slang. So we really get the fidelity locally of what words mean. And we say local, we mean on average at the county level when you think about geography. Um, Really unique capability when it comes to looking at what people are saying and then how to ensure your messaging achieves the effects that you desired. Just a high level view. This example here on the right is a public offering we had throughout COVID from 2020 through end of 2021. Even Governor Cuomo in New York, before he got in trouble, used to publicly refer to this in his evening news segments, where we were providing a coronavirus panic index. And so that map there, you could zoom in down to the county level and see what words were evoking which emotions, so that you, as a public administrator or an official, could make sure that you don't put egg on your face or your foot in your mouth, right? And know that, hey, I'm creating the effect that I'm wanting to have. So on the left here is just this atypical way that we work. Now, if we're deploying to somebody else's environment, it's a little bit different. Um, these are the core 4 use cases that we had funded through SBIRs, both under U.S. Air Force and then through prototype development MVPs with the Department of State Global Engagement Center and the Department of VA AI Institute, as well as SOCOM through SoftWorks. We did another one. But the first one here, personal readiness and resiliency. Our technology, as I mentioned, performs already in adjacent mission areas with regard to readiness and resiliency. I mentioned the National Suicide Hotline. Within HR systems for corporations, we measure employee stability, employee readiness. And so if you think about the SF-86, no doubt those of you listening have filled one of those out before, back when it was hand jamming, or since equip, you got a 4-day window to do that. But of course, the only information we put on there is favorable information. I spent most of my career in the special mission unit world, and no amount of assessment and selection for these organizations can really figure out everything about somebody. And I saw this firsthand when I had to get escort certified in Chesapeake to escort a charged prisoner from a special mission unit where that person had been charged with sexually assaulting their 2 nephews. And so all that time being at a special operations unit, he was a senior E7, been in service for 16 years, TS SCI clearance with a CI polygraph. But all of a sudden, these issues were illuminated, and he was ultimately charged and convicted. And I was the young officer that was in charge of dealing with that prisoner escort duty. But a very real scenario to think about, what do we know about our people? And I could reflect on my time in command, where between me and my senior enlisted advisor, we were only given so much information from the medical side and then from the physical readiness side. And so I could measure their physical training, their shooting proficiency, if they were on airborne status, if they're going to certain other tactical schools or SEER school, things like that. I could ensure those sorts of readiness. But when it came to their cognitive and emotional readiness and stability, those were generally lacking. It seems like a lot of recent speeches of today are really tackling that sort of gap. And again, I mentioned a use case from the Sec Navy on his recent speech on mental health awareness month. The other 3 use cases came about through more SIBRs, through the Air Force ISR support here in number 2 with next gen threat detection, where we were supporting, hey, you're looking at a group of people or certain individuals through ISR, and you're gathering either textual data from that person and their environment or audible information off that person from the environment. And more recently, we even did optical character recognition models where we were pulling off of, say, their T-shirt or signs or things in the background to yield emotional data. Number 3 is all about we did an AFWORK Space to the Future challenge where we were focused on personnel readiness and their families, kind of like the POTFF initiative at SOCOM, where it was all about cognitive load reduction for the analyst and the decision maker behind the analyst, really filtering the signal from the noise and making sure that, hey, we're not just following some influencer because they have 1 million followers on this social media platform, but we're following the people that are actually creating a bias towards action for their desired audience. And then number 4 there with information operations and from information warfare, through the Department of State, we kind of honed in on, not just what's propaganda and how to counter it, but specifically what information out there do you need to focus on, because that's the information that's driving behavior. So you think about like humanitarian aid, disaster relief, foreign fighter flow, things like that. We really sort of helped the Global Engagement Center kind of turn a new leaf when it came to how they do that business. Here's a quick summary. This is really focused on science and behavioral psychology, going back to 1972, where Dr. Paul Ekman kind of illuminated this 6 core emotions of the human experience. Our technology has patented several awards to it. We continue to build our federally compliant business under the name of Cognovi Government Services LLC, and we'd love to talk to you all about how we can measure, predict, and shape your personnel, as well as the audiences or groups of individuals, groups that you're seeking to inform or influence abroad. And then last slide here is just our kind of business slide about who we are. And then one quick example for the Navy here. This was a prototype we built for Fleet Forces Command, where we were looking at these specific ships and looking at morale, welfare-related issues, including suicide. And I believe my time is up, so I'll turn it back over to Dave.
No, Zach, thanks for that. I didn't mean to hustle you, but obviously we're trying to keep our schedule. I found myself mesmerized. That's why I was late to the stage in the first place. So thanks for that. Appreciate it. So the way this is going to work, folks, is everyone will get a post-event report who presents today, a better understanding of who is in the audience for them, and connecting them up together. So obviously, if you've got a desire to interact with Zach and Cognovi Labs, we'll handle that post-event and get you all connected up. So thanks for that again, Zach. We're going to go ahead and end this session, and our next and last one of the day will commence in 5 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.